Hi and welcome. I'm Steve Martirano, and this is the Behavioral Corner. You're invited to hang with us as we discuss the ways we live today, the choices we make, the things we do, and how they affect our health and well-being. So you're on the corner, the Behavioral Corner. Please hang around a while. Here we are on the corner again, the Behavioral Corner, with me, the world's greatest hanger-outer. I can do that as well as anybody. We sit here and see who passes by. And occasionally it's somebody real cool. That's what we think we have for you on the corner today. We're going to talk about writing. It may seem odd to you, what's writing got to do with behavioral health? I think it's got a lot to do with the way we feel and emotionally and spiritually being able to write. And we have a terrific resource today to talk about that. Tim Whitaker is the executive director of something called the Mighty Writers. And what they do, quite simply, is they teach kids to write. Tim has had a distinguished career, both in teaching and as an editor and writer. He has edited periodicals in the Philadelphia and Pittsburgh area for many years, and he's also been the head writer for NBC Radio and written for PBS, as well as the New York Times, the Washington Post, the Philadelphia Inquirer. So he is more than qualified to talk about not only this organization that he now heads up, the Mighty Writers, but also writing and what the actual benefits of it are. Tim, thanks for joining us on the corner. We really appreciate it.
Happy to be here, Steve. I never sounded so good. That sounded great. I'll have to put that on a loop and play that a few times.
Thanks. I'm really good at making things up as I go along. No, actually, listen, I came across your work a long time ago with the Mighty Writers, and the minute you see the name of it and you go, we teach kids to write, you just go, if you care about kids and writing, you go, that's a good idea. We're really grateful to have you. Tell us about the organization, its history, and we'll get a little deeper into it as we go along. How old are you guys?
Well, I was in journalism for 30 years, journalism one way or another, and it just stopped being fun. Around 2009, I was the editor of the Philadelphia Weekly, the alternative newspaper in the city, and the collapse of the publishing industry, the newspaper industry, had hit us pretty hard. And, I went from having meetings with the owner about what stories to do and who to hire to do them to who I was going to lay off and how many pages I was going to cut. And I thought, well, I'm too old for this.
Yeah.
So the only thing I knew how to do was write. And I always liked kids. So I had this idea of teaching Philly kids about writing because writing is back of the bus now. It's like math, science, standardized testing. But, it's only the occasional teacher here or there that loves writing that will get to these kids about it, especially in the public school system in Philadelphia. It's just completely overlooked. So I thought if I could get a program like that together, that would be like sort of my ideal program. So I put together a plan, and I got some funders to give me some seed money. And we started 2009 on the corner of 15th and Christian in a storefront where we still have a location right next door to Kenny Gamble. Kenny Gamble owns the building. He's been really good to Mighty Writers. And we just started having kids from the neighborhood come in after school every day. We helped them with their homework, and then we talked about writing. And we, got better and better at this as time went on. And then opened another Mighty Writers Center in West Philadelphia. Then one for the Mexican community, a bilingual location in the 9th Street Market. And then one in North Philly and one in Camden. And one for the children of farm workers out in Kennett Square, which is one we're really focusing a lot of attention and money on right now.
That's terrific. Clearly, you sparked the idea. It's been your life. What was the kids' reaction when they were confronted with, they're going to teach you how to write? How did they react to that?
They reacted like, I don't want to do that.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
Yeah, I think it's like the whole approach at Mighty Writers was, we're not a school. We're a whole different deal here. And you kids are great, and you tell these great stories. I mean, city kids just tell the greatest stories because they see so much crazy shit all the time, right? So on the playgrounds or on the block or wherever. And so they'll tell those stories verbally, and you just collapse in laughter all the time. But they've never been taught how to put that on paper, how to really, make something of that. And in doing that, they learn how to write an email, they learn how to communicate with grown-ups, and so and then that's sort of how we operate. Is nobody's sitting at a desk with their hands folded, being disciplined. It's a clubhouse atmosphere.
Yeah, well, you're right about the under emphasis on clear writing in schools. Seems a luxury now when it ought not to be, but even back in the day, 200 years ago when I was in school, there were composition classes, but it was overwhelmingly about grammar. And I remember the dreaded diagramming of the sentences.
Did you go to Catholic school by any chance?
No, I did not. It took a stronger Catholic than I to survive that kind of education. And, if you had a good grammar teacher, it was a great benefit. If you had a bad grammar teacher, like I did, you had to wind up hoping that you had an instinct for good grammar. So tell me about the skills that you teach. I mean, do you diagram sentences at the Mighty Writers?
No, we don't diagram sentences. What we'll do is we'll introduce a topic, one that the kids will be interested in. And, we have so many different programs at this point. So, we have, and everything's virtual, which has changed the atmosphere and the way we do things dramatically. But, with typically small groups of kids in the same age group interested in the same thing. So, a lot of our workshops, we have a lot of girl power workshops, incredibly popular. We have mindfulness, where kids learn about mindfulness and then practice mindfulness and then write about mindfulness. And then, since the virus, that's been a big favorite and really helpful, I think, to the kids. So, we have a lot of different things. So we introduce those topics and we get the kids to write about these topics, especially in the early stages, without any sense of grammar. Just get it down on the page. And then we back into revision. And, no writers like revision. So that's something you really have to introduce, slowly and carefully and have kids realize that their story is phenomenal. It just needs to be buttoned down.
Yeah.
And that all writers have to do that.
Well, spoken like a former editor, for sure. But it is it is encouraging to hear that, the reluctance to be edited is innate.
Yes. Oh, yeah.
What do you mean? Don't rewrite me. What are you talking about? What?
Absolutely.
So I can imagine a 12-year-old, giving that to you, you must go, oh man, this is never going to end, I guess. I do want to get into editing a little bit down the road because I'm fascinated by where editors come from. You're right about it. It's a skill set that's really rare. A good editor is the difference between, Ernest Hawthorne and Ernest Hemingway.
Exactly.
At the end of the day. So the kids start out with just express yourself. Now, a lot of these kids, inner city kids, you mentioned the pandemic for sure, but just in general, their life experience can be traumatic. They grow up with violence, they grow up with broken homes, and many in poverty. To what extent do you think, or are you seeing, that getting their feelings down on paper is an important therapeutic?
Well, I've always seen that, Steve, no matter where the kids come from or where people come from, that when you put down on paper what you're feeling, and not just randomly, but really, think about it first and then write it and then revisit it and all that does. And this is particularly true in the case of the kids we work with, I think, that do see a lot of violence and a lot of chaos in their neighborhoods or wherever they are. Mm-hmm. I think the fact that they can sit down and gather their thoughts and put it down on paper, and then revisit it, and just really journaling is what we're talking about here.
Yeah.
I think it does. I think it does great things for them.
I was a little disingenuous in my introduction. I know pretty definitively the role writing plays in the mental health field. Journaling is a tried and true method for getting people to express stuff that's inside and hidden and destructive in that hiding.
Exactly.
So when you see it on the page, it can be very helpful. Do kids work on computers? Do they longhand? What's the mechanics of it?
It's a mix. Some of the classes, depending on what the topic of the class is or what the assignment is, it'll begin with pencil and paper and then move to computer. But more typically, it's computers, laptops. Some kids work on their phones. Some kids write on their phones.
Really, do they? It's amazing. Well, you know what? I
Yeah.
mean, for dinosaurs like us, you might go, that's not, you can't do that. You got to sit at a desk and you got to open a vein. It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
I do want to get very deep into what the impact of social media and the internet has on the whole idea of writing. I told you before we began this that I felt that even though it may seem counterintuitive, I think we're entering an era, not of maybe the golden age of writing, but certainly of a heightened importance in the ability to write clearly. Everything we consume now on the internet, except for, of course, the cat videos, you have to read.
Yeah.
I mean, somebody wrote the Wikipedia page. Somebody's even writing those snappy LL Bean ads I get every 30 seconds. So it's really important now, right?
Absolutely. The opportunities for people that want to go into writing has shifted dramatically, of course, and not for the better necessarily. But there are opportunities like the ones you just cited where, if you can learn to write really short and, your passion isn't journalism per se, you can still find a lot of work.
It's always been tough to write, but it's always been even tougher to write for a living, and now it's not gotten any easier. I mean, there's a great opportunity, but there's so much out there that they're not paying people a whole lot of money. When these kids begin to open up, what is your experience in how deeply they will dive into their lives and the way they really feel about things? Do they really get down to it?
Yeah, they do. They get really down to it. We've had some kids that have had really personally dramatic trauma in their families. A suicide comes to mind with one kid, another kid that wrestles with depression, clinical depression. And in the case of those two kids, for example, that was a topic that could not be approached with their peers and just barely with me. And over time, being able to talk about it and then write about it, over the course of a year, I would say, they stood up in front of the other kids and told the story, which I thought was, remarkable and such a great relief for them to be able to come out of the shadows with it.
Yeah. There is something incredibly powerful about taking something, often horrific, as you point out, and then articulate, saying it out loud. It sort of doesn't make it go away, but it demystifies it. It makes it seem less scary. Do you have the kids stand up after they finish their whatever they're writing on and deliver it in front of them?
We do a lot of that. It's our way of teaching public speaking as well. I'd like to do more of it actually. Now virtually, of course, that's really difficult, but good to see the kids stand up, feel proud of what they're saying. And the examples of the two people I just talked about, they were incredibly moving and, had people feeling a lot of emotion as they were telling their stories.
What's the age group you're dealing with?
We deal with kids 7 to 17. We also have toddler programs in the last couple of years that are really successful.
Toddler programs? How's that work? With crayons?
Well, with crayons and with Ready Whip and with Daisy Cream. They make letters with, any way we can get them to get excited about that.
Now, who's funneling your students to you? Are they coming through the school system, or
they don't come through the school system because the schools are they're under siege. So in the 11 years ago when we started, we had relationships with a number of teachers and schools in the city, but the money kept getting tighter and tighter, and the teachers wound up doing more and more and more to the point where they just don't have the time to even think about it, So we do much better by just embedding ourselves in the community, going door to door, neighbor to neighbor, friend to friend, kid to kid, and we never have a problem attracting kids. We just, we're right in there.
What's a typical, sign up period? They sign up for a length of time, or how does that work?
When we're not virtual, when we're in person, they sign up. The program that we have after school at all these locations runs from 3 o'clock to 6 o'clock. And, it's a everyday kind of deal. So those kids we know really well. Those kids were really working hard on their writing. And so they have to show up, they have to be there, and they know that. There's a waiting list. So if they're not, if they fall out, they're going to lose their spot. So that's one program. But then we have scores of workshops, nights and weekends with different age groups, and that can run once a week for 4 weeks. It could be about sports writing or the election, any number of topics. Those kids we don't know quite as well, but we're getting them to think. We're getting them to write, a little bit at least.
Are you worried that the kids who might most need for their emotional and mental well-being, the program like Mighty Writers, are sort of in the worst spot to appreciate this? I mean, the family life may be stressed, and there may not be somebody actively saying, "Hey, try this." Do you worry about that?
Well, there's so many stereotypes. I'm not saying that is a stereotype, but there are many sort of sweeping ideas out there about the kind of families we're dealing with that are economically really challenged. But the one thing I've found over and over again is how much they care about their kids, and they'll do anything to relieve the whatever stress they're feeling, even if they're the ones causing it. They're aware of they love their children, so they're wide open about that.
What are you finding with regard to the girls over the guys? Is there a difference in their approach? Is there a difference in their candor? What do you see there?
It's typical of what everybody thinks, that the girls are easier to open up. They're more interested in writing sort of natively, and boys are a harder sell. The boys that do get involved, once they turn the corner, they get pretty invested, and it's a big victory when we get those boys excited about writing.
Mm-hmm. We're talking to Tim Whitaker. He is executive director of the Mighty Writers Program in our area, in the Philadelphia area. Now they're in lots of places. By the way, is this spread beyond initial area?
Well, we're in Camden. We're in Kennett Square.
Right.
We have a program just starting in Atlantic City and Trenton. So
okay, so you're growing.
We're getting deeper into Jersey all the time.
How are you funded? Are you not? You're a nonprofit?
We're a nonprofit founded by foundations, individuals, corporations.
Is there any charge for this?
No charge. Everything we do is free.
It's remarkable. Let's talk about social media. It's the elephant in the room, of course. I believe about social media now the same thing I used to say about New York City. Anything you want to say about it is true.
That's true.
Right? I mean, anything you want to say.
Yep.
But let's break it down in terms of the way it affects writing and thinking clearly and emotional health in the good column and a bad column. What's good about social media from your standpoint as a teacher of writing? Well,
at Mighty Writers, we get a lot of volunteers who, older volunteers especially, who will sort of curse the coming of social networking and how this has ruined writing, and everything's a short burst and the kids can't think. And we've always rejected that. We always think that there's nothing wrong with Instagram or with YouTube or Facebook or even TikTok. Just be smart about it. If the goal is to get somebody to laugh, figure out how to do that. That's an exercise and that's a skill, Or if you're going to, whatever you're going to do, just produce it well and be proud of it, and writing short is always more difficult than writing long.
Well, the great sin to avoid, in my experience, has been overwriting. That's for sure. And the other thing is the social media. I would guess social media, in context of writing and expressing yourself, so you feel better and think clearer. It's never been easier to go from your thought, the thing you wrote, to the audience. If you're writing in a journal, you put the journal in the drawer and you go, I'm not going to show that to anybody. But in this context, you get a chance to put it out there right away. But there is a downside to all of this because you're very vulnerable when you let anybody read anything you've written. And in the context of social media, the wolves are out there. How do you prepare kids for what might happen in that context?
Well, there's a lot of bullying and all that stuff going on in a big way on mainly social networks. Twitter most especially, I think. So, we can say to the kids, if you're getting bullied, block that person immediately. Mm-hmm.
You advocate not engaging in that tit-for-tat stuff because it's just counterproductive, it just doesn't go anywhere. Is that it?
Yeah, for the most part. Again, we just say keep it smart. So, if you're going to debate somebody on social networking, make sure it's on a level they can be proud of. If you're going to call somebody a name or somebody calls you a name, get out of there. So that's kind of the rule of thumb.
Yeah. Have you seen? I know you have, but I'll ask the question anyway. Have you seen kids come in who are not demonstrative, shy, and have you seen their confidence grow?
Oh yeah, yeah. That's one of the things that one of our precepts about writing is that self-esteem just blows up when kids are able to express themselves. For many of them, for the first time. Especially when it goes from writing it down on paper to then talking about it or reading it to the other kids. And when that session is over, you just see these kids strutting around like, top of the world. It really does wonders.
We have historically dealt with some of these issues in a medical context, and that's appropriate many times. This is a therapeutic, really. Having a kid sit down and express himself on a page that you could do at home. You don't need to go to a doctor. You don't need any drugs prescribed. It could be beneficial that way. Do you offer programs where maybe people who can't be actively involved in Mighty Writers can do things at home by themselves?
Well, now it's all that. So, all our classes are virtual. They're all Zoom. So we're reaching a lot of kids from areas or situations where they couldn't shake free to go into a physical location. Mm-hmm. So we're seeing a lot of kids like that. And they come for a lot of different reasons. Our big mantra is to get kids to think clearly and write with clarity. You say it like over and over and over again. Mm-hmm. You can't write anything of value unless you're thinking clearly first. Mm-hmm. Because most writers, grown-ups do this too, when they sit down to write something, they start pounding at the keyboard before they give it a thought. That's what they want to say, right? Mm-hmm. Consequently, you get all these emails that ramble, and people have a hard time trying to figure out what people are saying. So, getting kids to think clearly just does amazing things for your self-esteem.
Yeah. That should be perfectly obvious. Just this couple of nuts and bolts stuff. I'm often made fun of by my children. I use punctuation. I mean, just except for exclamation points, I draw the line there. But I do capitalize, and I do put periods at the end of sentences. Very often, that's not necessary. How do you, as an instructor, do you tell them don't worry about that, and then work backwards to more structure, or how does it work?
Yeah, well, the structure is all in the revision, right? So typically, the first essay you get or the first piece of work that comes your way will be a lot of that, the capitalization missing and that kind of thing. We teach that, not everybody's buying into this way of expressing yourself, and you want to buy into everybody's way, right? So if you're looking for a job, or you're looking to get into college, or you're writing an essay for college, or even high school at this stage, you got to picture the person at the other end.
Do you dismiss the notion that talent is the most important prerequisite for sitting down and writing something? Pure talent?
Yeah, I do. I think everybody can write well if they work at it. I think some writers are always going to be a lot better thinkers. They're a lot more creative thinkers. And if they can combine the creative thinking and the discipline of writing, that's when you see these, writers that reach a whole other level. Yeah. But I think everybody can be taught to write well because, it's a discipline like anything else. And, it takes time and consideration and all of that. Again, it doesn't mean that one kid's not going to be a better writer than the other, but they're all going to be, respectable.
And they're all going to learn a certain rigor that's very important. Look, it's great. It's great when your kid's on a travel soccer team. I would minimize that for a second. Teaches you a lot of things in that context. But this is a program that I think if you weren't aware of it, the importance of it, the benefits, in the behavioral health sense, you might not appreciate how important it is to write well, to think clearly, and get this stuff out. Tim, I want to just finish up here. I got a couple of quotes by writers on writing.
Okay.
Incidentally, there's been a lot of nonsense about writing. Some of these quotes are, well, I'll let you decide. I'll give you a couple of quotes. Tell me whether you agree or disagree.
Okay.
This is from Hemingway. Hemingway said, "It's none of their business that you have to learn how to write. Let them think you were born that way."
Yeah, I don't see any problem with that.
Yeah.
You know, I agree with that one.
All right, Stephen King said, "You want to be a writer, you must do two things above all others, and that is read a lot and write a lot." Do you emphasize reading?
Yep, big time, big time. You know, I've seen that quote before, and I can't underscore enough how pertinent I think it is. It's really, you have to read all the time if you want to be a good writer.
Yeah. Just a couple more. Joseph Heller, Catch-22, wrote, "Every writer I know has trouble writing." Is that true, or is that overstated?
You know, I don't know for sure. I have trouble writing, and I find it really difficult. I'll put it off. I'll do almost anything besides sit there and do it, given the option, you know.
Boy,
it's hard work.
It's true. I tell the story of when I was living in Los Angeles trying to write screenplays, which is a whole other kind of writing. One of the great things I did to divert my attention from writing was that I would go check the mail 3 or 4 times a day, in spite of the fact that I knew exactly when the mailman came, the same time every day. It didn't matter. I would go out 4 or 5 times a day. And when he finally arrived and I saw him put the mail in the box and drive off, all I was struck by what a great job that is. Look at that. He knows exactly where he has to go. He knows exactly what goes in that box. I used to envy mailmen a lot. Finally, this one from Winston Churchill, and this is in the context of writing. Churchill said, "Never, never, never give up."
Yeah, I buy that. You know, if you give up, it's not going to go anywhere. So, you know, if you're a writer trying to sell something, you know, there's no giving up there. And if you're a kid just trying to express yourself, you know, we're not big on giving up.
Great. The Mighty Writers is the name of the organization. Tim Whitaker, their executive director, has been our guest here on the Behavioral Corner. It's been terrific. Tim, people want more information, they just go to the website?
That's the place to go, mightywriters.org.
You take donations as well, I'm sure?
It's all on there, yep.
Yeah, you get a couple of dollars. This is a great program. Tim Whitaker, thanks for hanging with us on the corner. This has been great, and I hope I can get you back again real soon.
Great. I enjoy it, Steve.
At Retreat Behavioral Health, we believe in the power of connection and quality care. We offer comprehensive, holistic, and compassionate treatment from industry-leading experts. Call 855-802-6600 and begin your journey today.
That's it for now. And make us a habit, hanging out at the Behavioral Corner. And when we're not hanging, follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter on the Behavioral Corner.